come. Creed, if you want to come and buy my dinner, I'm just...
We'll go, Chris.
Yes, sir. We'll split one 4 ways. So tonight I'd like for you to turn in Revelation chapter 8. And we're going to be looking tonight at the 7th seal. This is the prelude to the trumpets. And you're going to see some things that happen. And I want you just for a moment in your mind's eye just to think about this very first verse. When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about a half an hour. Now I want you to think about this just for a moment. Think about if you had to stand silent in a situation, if you were in court for a verdict to be read. If you had to stand in silence to find out something that you had been dying to know, and you had to wait for 30 minutes, about a half an hour. Consider all of heaven in total silence for about a half an hour. And what you need to understand is heaven knows what's about to happen. And all of humanity is about to change forever when these trumpets start to blow. We're going to dig into that tonight so that you can see it. Verse 2 says, "And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. Then another angel having a golden censer came and stood at the altar. He was given much incense that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which was before the throne of God." Now I want you to pay attention to something just for a moment so that you can understand what we're talking about when we say a censer. If you've ever been in a Catholic church, there are certain times that the priesthood will come into the church and they will have a little brass ball of a sense on a chain. And they swing it back and forth and smoke comes out of that. That's incense. And if you've ever been in a church, I remember when Travis lost a very good friend. His name was Josh Gorski. And it was the first time that I ever saw this in action, and all of a sudden 2 and 2 made 4. And I had never physically seen it before, but I remember the aroma in the building from the incense. Now remember, the Bible says that our prayers go up like a sweet savor into the nostrils of God. And so this angel is given much incense along with those prayers. This is a holy thing that's taking place. Incense is a very powerful thing. There are some incenses, have you ever been around them, that they are just so pungent that it's like you walk in, it's like, man, it's just so strong. But then there are others that when you get around them, they're burning, or they're oils maybe. And they're just so pleasant. They're not overwhelming. I don't know whether this will be overwhelming in heaven or not, but I know that the aroma will go throughout all of heaven. And it will be smelled by everyone involved. Verse 4. "And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints ascended before God from the angel's hand. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from the altar and threw it to the earth. And there were noises, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake. So the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound." Now let's slow down just for a second. I want you guys to catch something. Remember back when the saints were released under the seal to come out from under the altar and they were given robes. Remember we talked about that last week. How many times do you think that those voices prayed and they cried out? We were talking about, in this sense, we're talking about the voices of the martyrs. If you remember back, they said to God, "How long will you keep us here? How long will you wait to revenge us. How long? How many prayers have we prayed for God to change a situation? How many prayers have we prayed for people who have hurt us and harmed us? Anybody ever prayed that? I've prayed many sick 'em God prayers. I'll be honest with you. And you know who I learned that from? I learned it from David. The Bible says that David was a man after God's own heart. And so I have been very, very careful in my life who I have truly released God on. Everybody understand what I'm saying by that? I try never to pray that prayer that says, God, I can't take it anymore. I'm turning them over to you. And the reason I don't do that is because I hate to see what happens to someone who's in the hand of an angry God. It scares me because I wouldn't want to be there. Think about a God who is about to allow a censer filled with fire from an altar, filled with incense and filled with prayers to be released on the earth. This is about to happen. This is what is about to happen here. All of that's been stored up, all of those things. Can we call it wrath? Can we call it judgment? Can we call it justice? You see, mercy and justice. When we get in trouble, you've heard me say this before, when we get in trouble and we stand in front of the judge, what do we want? Mercy or justice? Mercy. But if somebody hurts our kid and we're standing in front of the judge, what do we want? Justice. All right, now think about this. It's better that a millstone be tied around your neck and drowned in the depths of the sea than to offend one of my little ones. That's God talking. Now think about that. It's better that you were never born, that you were drowned, than to mess with one of God's kids. Daddy told me one time, he said he was praying, he said this person had really been doing damage to him, just really harming him. And he got tired of it. And he prayed this prayer. He said, God, they're messing with your property. Think about it. If you have given your life to Christ, do you not belong to him? Amen. Are you not his child? Thus are you not his property? We'll see later that we will be sealed with a mark as Christians. Does that make us God's? You better believe it does. His children. Let's keep going. The first trumpet. The first angel sounded, and hail fire followed, mingled with blood. And they were thrown to the earth, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all green grass was burned up. This is the first trumpet. 1/3 of all the trees, and all of the green grass, all burned up. I looked out the door and I saw somebody had a fire going this last week. I thought to myself, that ain't right bright. Anybody realize that we're in a drought right now in this area? Mm-hmm. Think about this, guys. This summer, we couldn't turn the rain off. This spring and this summer, we couldn't turn the rain off. And this fall, we ain't been able to buy a drop. Now think about it. We think, what do you mean burn it all up? Do you realize that the least spark right now would set Sumner County ablaze? And it already has in several places. You understand what I'm saying to you? So now think if, I'm just talking here. Now understand that these are my opinions. These are my views. This is how I see this. But I'm just giving you something just to think about. What if this earth entirely turned into a tinderbox and it was just a circumstance like it is right now? just right now. How much would it take to set this county on fire? Just this county. It wouldn't take a lot, would it? So you think about what would happen in a situation if God just held the rain back for just a few months and let everything dry out real good. You see how easy that would be? Does this make sense to you tonight? It wouldn't take much of anything. Now, watch this. The second trumpet. Then the second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. And a third of the sea became blood. And a third of the living creatures in the sea died. And a third of the ships were destroyed. I love watching like the History Channel and science and all that kind of stuff. And they talk about these cataclysmic events that have taken place in the past with simply these big meteorites coming down out of the sky. Think about something that is so volatile that it hits the water, turns 1/3 of all the seas to blood, destroys 1/3 of all the wildlife, all the fish in the sea, and 1/3 of all of the ships on this planet.
Now, what's the significance of the third?
Of the third?
The third of everything.
The question is, what is the significance of the third of everything? Robert, numerology is a very big part of the Bible. Thirds show up constantly. Threes show up constantly. The actual meaning of it, I wish I could tell you that I knew the specific answer. I have an opinion about it, and I'll share that with you. I believe that it's like it was when it was the Exodus with the children of Israel. Everything happens in bits and pieces because it has to be building blocks that set upon one another in order to make these events come into place. Now, what the specificity, I guess I should say, of the thirds is, I don't know. That's just what I believe. I believe that it has to happen in sections and segments to create a worse and worse and more chaotic situation to push. Now, let me just put it this way. To push a chain of events that must take place that bring the entire world under one government, one rule, one order to make everything happen. And I think that that's part of it that makes it happen. The other thing is this. I wondered about how a third of the water was turned to blood. Okay? Did it come from the meteorite, or the fire, the mountain that fell into the water? Did it come from that? Or did it come from the blood of all of the living creatures that were actually in the water?
The third of
a third, yes.
was killed. Yeah.
Exactly. So I also know that contamination, and when things are dead, and what happens to water is it becomes polluted to the point that it can't be used. It can't be utilized. And so that's where I'm coming from with it, Robert. I don't know if I even came close to answering your question, but that's just what I see. I see as it being bits and pieces that have to build up to this paramount ending of the world that we call Armageddon. It's got to happen. And what it does, I see, is it pushes people closer and closer and closer and closer back into a central location. That's how I see it.
I understand. I didn't get you off track.
No problem at all. Thank you for the question. I don't know that I answered it really.
No, you gave me some clarification.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. So, think about how much stuff comes to this country in shipping containers. Anybody ever heard of a little store? We got a chain around the United States. Actually, it's global now. It's called Walmart. Think about how many shipping containers, just Walmart, as big as they are, from China to here. Think about losing a third of that. We wouldn't have the Super Walmart anymore. We'd have the mom and pop shop on the corner. That's about all the merchandise they'd have. You see how catastrophic this is going to be?
And cripple everything.
Everything. Moving on. The third trumpet. Then the third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch. And it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is Wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood. And many men died from the water because it was made bitter. Now, oceans are salt water. We're not relying on the ocean for our drinking water. But now what happens to our drinking water? When a third of it is polluted, when a third of it is undrinkable on this planet. I don't know if you guys are wrapping your mind around these events. Again, it's the series of events that keeps pushing people. They can't stay where they were. They don't have any water. What are they going to do? They're going to have to move to another location. You see what I'm saying? It's hurting is what I see it as. I see it as hurting people and pushing people into central locations, into key locations for the will of God to be done as he laid out to John while he was on the Isle of Patmos in the book we call Revelation. That's the way I see it. That's what I see happening. Now, I know that there's other opinions, and I'm fine with them. This is what I see.
You think it's pushing everybody towards the Middle East, where a lot of this, you know, the final thing's going to take place?
Well, the question is, do I think it's pushing people to the Middle East where all this is going to take place? Robert, there is no reason why it wouldn't. People are going to have to go where their things are, where they have food, where they have shelter, where they have whatever.
Well, you have the rebuilding of the temple. You have the Antichrist going to put his image in the temple. And there's a lot that's going to happen in that part of the world. So.
Not to mention that God is going to be drawing the Jewish people from all over the world back to Israel. And there is a massive migration that's going on right now of people moving back. The influx going back to Israel right now is unbelievable. But it's nothing like what's going to happen. You're going to have something. If you go back, the Tower of Babel, if you remember, just to tie this together, all of creation started where? Anybody know? The Garden of Eden. Okay. So my belief, my opinion is eventually everything is going to have to come together to where people are going to influx, they're going to move, they're going to migrate on these great pilgrimages, right? To go to see this Antichrist wherever he's located, set up. And all of these militaries, all of these armies, all of these peoples are going to start migrating, moving into an area to where it's not going to be a difficult thing for the battle of Gog and Magog and for the battle of Armageddon. Now this is a little bit further on in front of our studies. But it's got to be some way of bringing all these people together.
It's going to end where it all started.
That's what I'm saying. I believe that it will end where it began. It makes a lot of sense if you think about it. At least in my head it does. Don't go there. All right, the fourth trumpet. The heavens struck. Then the fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them were darkened. A third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. And I looked, and I heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the remaining blast of the trumpet, the three angels who are about to sound. What that means is, you haven't seen anything yet. You know, the first thing that came to my mind when I was studying this, talking about a third of the sun and a third of the moon, I thought, and I know I'm geeking again here, but I thought about the Death Star. You know, in Star Wars, you know how it looks like half of it or a third of it's like broken down and gone? That's the thing that came to my mind. I could just envision it. And so Becky and I were looking at the supermoon the other night, and we were coming in, and you could just, it looked like you could see continents on the moon with all of the things, that were there. And it was just so brilliant and bright. And as we were looking at it, I just started thinking of about a third of that disappearing and being gone. And a third of the sun disappearing and going. And then a third of the stars, which represents again the third that fell before. So that could even be part of it, Robert. It could be that third that God created that turned against it and it was done in thirds. There's a lot of probably theories that could be placed in there. But think about this. A third of the day's gone and a third of the night's gone. So what is happening to time? You see what I'm getting at? If a third of the day is gone and a third of the night is gone, then 2/3 of a 24-hour cycle is gone. Somewhere. So, I've never been to Alaska, but I have friends that used to live in Alaska. And they said one of the hardest things about living there is when the time of night comes where there is no daylight and you get disoriented and you don't know whether to get up or go to sleep. And the same thing when it shines all the time. This is not going to be something simple. This angel is sounding here, flying through heaven, saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's about to happen. Guys, I am going to say this. Never before in history, this was part of the article that I wrote. Never before in history have we ever seen anything like what is going on today. Never. I'm not trying to scare anybody. If I could scare you and it would fix everything, then I would just go ahead and scare you. But it's not going to fix anything. It's not going to change your mind because it has to be a change of heart, not a change of mind. Nothing ever lasts that's a change of mind. Because we change our mind back and forth, do we not? But when it's a change of heart, that's when we change. It's done in the heart. I have watched people over and over and over in my life give their life to Christ in their head. And sooner or later, they go back to doing what they used to do and living the way they used to live because they didn't do it in their heart. And I am guilty of it. When I was a kid, I would do it in my head because I was supposed to. I mean, every time a revival came through the church, I got saved. I've been saved so many times and I've been baptized so many times, I couldn't tell you. But it was all in my head. It was a relationship in my mind. It was never a relationship in my heart. And on the outside, what was I doing? Why did it not stick? Why did it not last? Why did it not hold? Because it wasn't in my heart to do it. Is that making sense to you tonight? I used to think that when babies were little, we ought to try to get them saved as quick as we could. But I'm thinking to myself, we missed the mark by not teaching, by not sharing the word and showing them what the truth is, and giving them the ability to make a choice and a decision, not based on pressure from a religious entity side of things, but from a desire to be in a relationship with God.
Amen.
Does that make sense? I mean, am I the only person that's ever felt pressured in church? I mean, am I the only one? I couldn't tell you how many people come and grab me by my arm and say, hey, we need to go to the altar. What, you need somebody to pray with you? I'm pretty good right here. I don't know if you guys experienced church the way I did growing up, but it was kind of different. That's all I'm going to say. It was just kind of different. But the urgency. I can say this without reservation. The people that I went to church with were well-meaning people. They were trying to do what they thought was right. What they had been taught was right. Didn't make it wrong. It just didn't make it right for me. Is that okay? But when it got right for me right here, when I realized, and now today when I make mistakes, when I fall short, when I drop the ball, when I mess up, it's not this that's drawing me. It's this. See, God didn't say that David was a man after his own mind. He said he was a man after his own heart. We good with that? All right, I'll leave that pony alone. We'll go ride another one. Now this, I'm kind of reluctant to dig into this one tonight. This is the fifth trumpet. This is very lengthy, and I want to make sure that we have enough time to spend on it. The next three trumpets have a lot of information, and I don't want us to miss what's going on. So I'm going to slow down a little bit, and if we run out of time, then this is where we're going to pick up next time we come back. But listen to what it says here. Then the fifth angel sounded. Now remember, we haven't seen anything yet, right? I saw a star fall from heaven to the earth. To him was given the key to the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit. And smoke arose out of the pit like smoke of a great furnace. So the sun and the air were darkened because of the smoke of the pit. Making sure I'm not getting too far ahead of myself. Then out of the smoke, locusts came upon the earth. And to them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. Verse 4. They were commanded not to harm the grass of the earth, or any green thing, or any tree, but only those men who did not have the seal of God in their foreheads. And they were not given authority to kill them, but to torment them for 5 months. Their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it strikes a man. In those days, where am I? Men will seek death and will not find it. They will desire to die, and death will flee from them. Now listen to this. The shape of the locust was like horses prepared for battle. On their head were crowns like gold, and their faces were like the face of men. Verse 8. They had hair like a woman's hair. Their teeth were like lion's teeth. And they had breastplates of iron. And the sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots with many horses running into battle. Verse 10. They had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. Their power was to hurt men 5 months. Again, you heard that twice. It's repeated. 5 months. And they had a king over them, the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew was Abaddon. But in the Greek, his name was Apollyon. And one woe is past. Behold, still 2 more woes are coming after these things. Now, I want you to think about this just for a minute. I don't know what this bug is actually called, but I call them carpet. They're red and black, and they look like they got carpet on the back of them. They're fuzzy, and they're pretty good size. I don't know what they actually are, but I know you can stomp and stomp and stomp, and you can't hardly kill one of them things. The only way I've ever found to kill one is to get it on a hard enough surface that you can grind your foot on it. Now think about this. This armor that's on these grasshoppers, these locusts, this is what I'm thinking about. In my mind, this is what I see. When I lived in South Louisiana, I got to spend a little bit of time on some shrimp boats and get back in the bayous and that kind of thing. And they had a grasshopper in the swamp. And that dude's about that long, and he's black as coal, and he's got 2 red stripes down him. And I mean, he's shiny, he's pretty. And I used to take treble hooks and try to snatch him, and I wound up falling in the swamp one night because of that. I caught a root and wound up going over the side of the boat. That's a whole other story. But those things were huge. Now I want you to think about something. Think about something that's going to be about the size of your index finger and about big around as my thumb. I'm just putting it out there. And when you try to step on him, he's got armor on him. And he stings like a scorpion. Not to kill you, but to make you miserable. Anybody been stung by a bee? Anybody been stung by a hornet? That's another level of bee sting right there. Okay? Trey got stung one time. He was weed eating. He hit a hornet's nest we didn't know we had. We found it. He hit the gutter on the front of the house with a weed eater, and it was a hornet's nest right at the top of the eave of the house. And I'd never seen a child run so fast in my life. He went through the front yard and was on the other side of the road, and the weed eater lay on the ground running. I couldn't get to it to turn it off. But a hornet drove him that fast across the road. That was one. Think about this. These things are so thick that they darken the sky when they come out of this pit. You ever thought about that? I just see these little things that are just armored, and you try to kill them and you can't. And if you kill that one, there's probably 500,000 more to take its place. This is just the way my brain's working on this. This is just the first thing that's going to come up, and it's going to last for 5 months. Anybody ever been in pain? And it hurts? Roger, you don't know nothing about it, do you? Think about that kind of physical pain. I'm not talking about emotional pain. I'm talking about physical pain. Hurting like that for 5 months constantly, not finding any kind of peace anywhere. Remember, Robert, when you asked that question, I said, I see it being like it was in the Exodus. If you remember the plagues, the 9 plagues that were in the Exodus, they said, you guys got to go. Just get rid of them. Anyway, this is what I'm seeing. Any questions about any of this so far?
I was going to just make a statement. It's, you know, I've had many studies through Revelations over the years, and I always hear a lot of people try to relate what they, you know, this type of thing to something that is man-made, like a helicopter, or, you know what I'm saying? Sure. Something like that. But, you know, when you do that, you take God out of it, because there's nothing man-made about any of this. This is all divine power right here. Right. I mean, we've never seen any of this stuff. Man can't make what God's going to unleash right there.
That's true. I agree with that. But there are some symbols that there's no way that John, when he saw the things that he saw, could call them anything other than chariots of fire.
Understood. You
know, flying across the sky. I mean, he'd never seen a plane before. There would be no way that he could have called, hey, you know what, an F-16 went across, you know. Yeah, that was a B-24 or whatever, you know. There's no way he could have called that and made that. So yes, Robert, I think that's two-sided. I think that there are some things that are very specifically man-induced, but this I do not see as being one of those. I literally see this as being a physical creature because it's so descriptive.
Well, I think when you start to get into these trumpets, I don't think anything about that can be anything of man. I think prior to that, some of the things he saw possibly could be, because it's before the real chaotic, you know, Armageddon's fixing to start, you know.
Right.
You know, I just think that sometimes people try to take the God out of the fight and think it's all us, that, you know, we're just fighting against each other, we're going to kill each other. That's not it.
Not right here, it's not. But later on, you will see that.
Right. Yes.
You will see that later on, that we, mankind, we, human beings, do fight against each other. And that being said, I've always wondered how this is going to happen. How all these people are going to just start just slaughtering each other, and they're all on the same team. And I've been studying Islam. I'm reading a book, Only One God, and it says Jesus or Allah. And it's about a Muslim man who converted to Christianity, and he's teaching about the Muslim faith and how it works. And you would be shocked at the amount of fights, infighting that have taken within inside of the Muslim faith, and the thousands upon thousands that they have killed each other. Had nothing to do with any outside thing. It was just the two different belief systems inside of Islam. It's not going to be as hard as we think, because we don't think, we don't think about the Marines going against the Air Force, going against the Army, going against the Navy. You know, I mean, outside of football, I'm talking, you know, I'm talking about like each division of our military turns on itself and then starts wiping itself out. We can't fathom something like that, but that's what's going to wind up happening in the end. Not at this point, but later on, it all implodes, okay? So, I want to stop right here. I don't want to get into the sixth seal, or the sixth trumpet, because I want to pull some maps up and show you geographically. There's a river that it talks about right in the beginning of the next seal. It's called the Euphrates. That river is still in existence today. It was mentioned in Genesis. Okay? So that's a very old river, and the name of that river has not changed. But there are some things that come out of this, and I want to show you with a map, to pull it up and to show you how all this stuff is going to start happening geographically and how it's going to come together. So I want to just stop right here for tonight. I hope that's okay with you. Are there any other questions about anything? All right. I can't believe Tamara didn't have a question.
I do, I just don't want to ask it.
Why not?
Are we still here? Are we still here during this time?
That's a good question. The question is, are we still here during this time? Again, it's going to go back to a belief system that you're going to have for yourself. Now, I'm going to reiterate this because you guys didn't get the first part of it. It's pre-tribulation, mid-tribulation, and post-tribulation. It depends on your belief system of that. There are some people who believe before any of this happens and that would be a pre-tribulation person, that they would be gone at that point.
Would it be before the first seal?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. If you're a pre-tribber, yes. Okay. If you're a mid-tribber, it would be in the middle of the 7.5 years, or the 7 years, which would be the 3.5 years, when the Antichrist sets up his image in the temple. That would be a mid-tribber. Okay. And a post-tribber would be at the very end of the whole thing. So it's however you choose to believe, Tamara, whether you want to be a pre-tribulation, a mid-tribulation, or a post-tribulation. Personally, I hold to pre-tribulation. Again, the events that have to be set up to make all of this stuff start happening. I'm a movie buff. Okay, you guys, most of you know that. Well, everybody knows that about me. I love movies, okay? And I think about movies like, anybody ever seen a movie or heard about a movie called The Body Snatchers? Okay, it's an old movie, it's way back. Anybody ever heard of The Walking Dead? Okay, the zombies, the apocalyptic zombie stuff, all that kind of stuff. What about where we see aliens abducting people, right? Okay, so all of this stuff is already being placed into our media. It's already being placed into our minds, into our psyche, into our world, in our public world, because they have got to explain what is going to happen. They've got to explain it. And if you remember back several years ago, there was a group out in California. They were all dressed in black, had the Nike tennis shoes on, and they were looking for the Hale-Bopp comet. I think that's what it was, the Hale-Bopp comet. When it came, that there was a spaceship on the backside of that, I believe is the way it worked, and that when that comet came by, that they were all going to catch a ride on that comet and take off. These are the kind of things that are in the media constantly, and it's going to be the only way they can explain it. I mean, two people are going to be literally working together. And I think about stuff like being on a crosscut saw. two people are working together, right? And all of a sudden there's nobody standing there on the other side of it. Riding down the road, think about how chaotic the world is going to be. People are going to be driving trains, flying planes, small and large, driving vehicles.
Like something out of Twilight Zone.
Exactly.
Which is same concept.
Exactly. And the driver of this vehicle is going to be gone.
I have a question.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm going to be that kid in class. Chapter 9, verse 4. They were commanded not to harm the grass of the earth or any green thing or any tree, but only those men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads.
Right.
If men have the seal of God on their foreheads, then that means they're his children, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why would they still be there if it's a pre-tribulation?
You mean if it's a mid or post-tribulation? No. Okay.
What I'm saying is, if I'm a pre,
How is
which
there
I am,
people
I
still
believe,
there with seals?
I
Okay.
believe that it's going to be pre-tribulation, but I just
Solid
read
question.
this and it just like dawned on me, like, wait a minute.
Okay. Solid question. Let's go back to last week's lesson. 144,000 who have the mark. You remember that?
Yes.
And they had a mark in them. They're the only ones to this point that we have any reference of having a mark. It's the 144,000 that are there. Everybody stood, you got that?
So is it the ones that have denied the mark of the beast
Who have the mark?
that have the mark of God?
No. The 12 tribes of Israel. That's right. You weren't here last week.
No, but we've discussed some of
Yes.
these
The
previously.
12, if you go back and you look, in last week's lesson, 12 tribes of Israel are named. And inside of each of the 12 tribes, if you go back to chapter 7, it talks about the seal of Israel. Okay? And it talks about that 144,000 of the tribes of the children of Israel were sealed.
Right?
That's 12,000 from each tribe.
Right.
These are the ones that cannot be touched. These are the ones that they're commanded not to touch. So, are there going to be anybody that comes out of this that goes to heaven? Right?
Well, all of them with the mark of God would go to heaven.
That's right. Of the 144,000.
Right.
Okay? Of the 144,000. That's the key. At this point, my belief system of the pre-tribulation is that they're gone. There's going to have to be a mark that's going to be given to each man, woman, and child. Okay? And without that mark, you cannot buy, sell, or trade. You can't do it. Think about it. The RFD, is that what they're called?
RFID.
RFID. Okay. When I worked at Nissan, we had a card, and I just walked by and just wiped my billfold on the thing and popped the gate open. Same thing at the police department. A lot of businesses got that same kind of, it's just a pass key, okay? So now they have older people that they're giving these little chips, and they're implanting them in them because they get lost real easy. It's like a tracking device. I think Knox has got doesn't he have a tracking device of some kind in him?
Microchip.
A microchip, so that you can find him no matter where he's at, right? Okay, now think about that. If a dog has got a microchip in it and can be found anywhere on this planet, if a person gets that microchip put in them, do you think they can be found?
Do you know that Israeli special forces are already testing them?
I believe that.
I saw an article on it.
I believe that. I believe that there's a reason and a purpose for it, and I believe it's fulfillment of Scripture. But I also know this. Of the people that I know, of the younger generation, younger being my kids' age and beneath, hardly any of them ever carry cash. Rarely. Unless it's a business situation. But rarely do they carry cash. What do they carry? Debit card. They're playing with their phone. They're working they're banking on their phone. They're transferring this. They're buying, selling. They're doing everything with their phone. Right now it's really convenient. If you had in your hand or in your forehead that little chip, and you were able to go to Walmart and buy your groceries and beep, how convenient would that be? You don't have to worry about getting robbed.
So
right?
I guess, I don't mean to interrupt, but to get back to this, because I'm still confused. What you're saying is, if it's pre-tribulation, everyone at that point is gone.
That's correct.
The people that have the mark of God are people that obviously did not take the mark of the beast. They're basically the ones that...
No, that's not correct.
But they're the ones basically that have become saved, okay, I'll use that word, after the tribulation has occurred.
Okay, they don't have a mark though, Robert. That's the thing. There's not a mark in them. The only ones that have the mark that are sealed are the 144,000, which are of the 12 tribes of Israel. They're the only ones that have the mark of God that have been sealed. That's it.
Well, why didn't they go into tribulation?
That's part of the plan of God. They have to be there.
It's because of their lineage and...
That's the remnant.
Weren't they the people from the Old Testament virtually that weren't here during Jesus' time?
No. The question is, were they the people that were here before Jesus? No, that means that they would have been resurrected and come back again. No, that wouldn't be correct. That wouldn't stand to Scripture. The 144,000 is very clear in chapter 7 of Revelation. It names 12,000 from the tribe of Reuben, 12,000 from the tribe of Benjamin, 12,000 from Dan. And it names every one of them, which totals 144,000. These are the only ones that have the mark. That's it.
So it's basically, in tribulation, God says, you guys got to hang back for a bit.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because, Robert, they don't know. Here's how they don't know. When the tribulation starts, there is 3.5 years of peace. You got to understand that. 3.5 years of peace. The temple's been started up. Sacrifice has been started back again. Everything is back in place like it was in the time before Christ. Everything has happened like it was supposed to be. Everybody got it? Everybody understanding that part? Okay? And so when it happens, they haven't accepted Jesus as their Savior. So they can't go. Nobody can go unless you've accepted Christ. That's the only way you're going to be caught in the rapture or the calling away or the taking away. Unless you're blood-bought, born-again Christian, you're not going in the rapture. Not going to happen.
So they technically don't know they have the seal of God. They don't know that they're part of it.
It hasn't happened yet.
Right, okay.
It hasn't happened yet.
Okay, I got it.
Because part of the thing that's going to happen is they don't even know what tribe they're part of yet right now.
I got it.
You got to understand that. Right now, today, nobody knows the lineage of the tribes. So all of this has got to be found. This evidence has got to be brought out. New things. And all of a sudden, these people, their bloodlines. Anybody watch TV about finding out what your DNA is and who you're part of and born in and all that kind of stuff? Vanderbilt right now is doing medicine based on DNA. And so what medicine works for 5 different people may not work for another person because they've got a different DNA. So because of DNA, they're going to be able to find out what tribe they're in. They're going to know for certain, and of those, 12,000 from each of those tribes. That is when they know that for sure, then God says, seal these 144,000. Bam. That's when they're sealed with that mark.
And then as they progress, they accept Christ as the...
It'll happen during that time.
Right, that's what I'm saying. As they move through the next period of time,
yes.
then they say, yes, we understand.
It'll be understood. Because soon as the Antichrist puts his image up in the temple, they are going to know this is not God, because God said no graven image. Don't bow before a graven image. That's how they're going to know for certain.
I got it.
That's when it's going to
I wanted
clear
to
it
make
all
sure
up.
that I was going to be gone before all this happens. Okay, I'm good now.
Again, it's going to have to depend on your view of it, your belief system of it, okay?
You just confirmed it again, so there we go.
Okay.
I'm good.
All right, so Tamla, I want to come back to Travis. We're over our time. God bless you guys. Y'all have a great night. We'll go ahead and kill the video this time. See you next